30 seconds and counting.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Clutch City Entertainment here. My name is Juan, and I'm joined by a very special guest, Jimmy Price, also known as Astros Future. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. So I'm going to jump right into it. We're here to talk Astros, specifically the new stars that are going to be coming up in the next couple of years. Jimmy Price, is known around the community, specifically in Astros Twitter, as someone that really knows their way around the system. So I'm just going to get us started. So how do you do? What do you do? And overall, how's been your experience, covering the Astros minor league system over your career?
Oh, it's a blast. There's always something to look forward to in the minors. There's always optimism. The Astros have obviously done very well developing prospects over the last just about a decade, actually. And the last 10 years has been fun. The Astros have had some of the top prospects in baseball. Then they've had some guys that weren't top prospects that ended up being, really, really good major league players like a Christian Javier, Luis Garcia, things like that. But overall, it's been great, fun to keep up with. Every year there's somebody that breaks out that kind of has a breakout season that wasn't on the radar before. And the Astros have just done a phenomenal job developing their prospects.
Okay, yeah, that's really great. And something that I've seen recently over, Astros anything is that their minor league system always seems to be ranked a little bit lower. But I feel like over the past couple of years, we've really seen that player development come through when specifically, let's just say, prospects that weren't in the top 100 come up and start contributing better than some of the top 100 prospects. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the low ranking, I think some has to do, especially recently, the Astros didn't have a first or second round pick for the last 2 years. I mean, they had Alex Santos, who they got as a comp pick for losing Garrett Cole, but they didn't have their own first or second round pick the last couple of years. And not having those big name, those top prospects when they're drafted come into the system, I think kind of weighs maybe on the national media folk who rank the system. There's not those big names in there. But I mean, you see like a guy like Hunter Brown, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but a fifth round pick, and the guy is a top 100 prospect now. And come re-rank time around the middle of the season, I'm sure you'll see him jump up those lists as well. So I think the Astros just do a good job of developing, finding guys' strengths, and especially with pitchers, guys pitching to their strengths up in the zone, whatever works for them, and just do a good job developing players. And we've seen it even with a guy like Jake Myers, who was a little bit slower through the system. And once he got to AAA, he kind of exploded offensively. And now he's, up with the Astros and playing well so far.
Yeah, I agree completely. And since you brought him up, let's talk about Hunter Brown, someone that I feel like has at least recently gotten that same hype that we gave Jeremy Pena last year when, we all kind of realized that this probably will be Correa's last year. Why do you think that Hunter Brown, all of a sudden, start to, get eyes on him when, maybe a lot of casual fans maybe before this year didn't really know who he was?
I think a lot of Astros fans might have known who he was just, because he had a good year last year. I mean, the strikeouts were there, made it up to AAA, 22 years old. But I think maybe around the, MLB platform, maybe a lot of people weren't as familiar. He's a fifth round pick out of Wayne State, small college. Went to college close to home, fifth round pick, and didn't make any top list right away or right after getting drafted. But after last year, he ended up on the top 100 list. We've seen what he can do this year. He's throwing. I mean, every start he's in the 98, 99 miles per hour. We see his big breaking curve. His command has gotten a lot better. That was one of the downfalls, kind of, I guess, with him. Maybe he walked too many guys, and just looking through his stats, you'll see there's a lot of starts or a lot of outings where he's not walking anybody, maybe walking one. He'll have a couple there where he walks 3 or 4, but overall he's turned that around. But I would say it's probably his draft status is what led to him maybe not being a well-known name, but that's the beauty of minor league baseball. It doesn't matter where you're drafted. It doesn't matter what you sign for. If you go out there and perform, you're going to rise those lists and you'll end up making it to the big league.
Yeah, I feel like that's been the story of the Astros minor league system is guys that, were ranked in, very low, or at least not as high as you would expect. Then they obviously come up and start doing great. And the other person I want to talk about is Luke Berryhill. He's personally one of my favorite prospects, to cover in general. And, recently he's been doing very good at the plate. And I feel like he highlights, a good 3 prospects that we've had over the last couple of years that are really solidifying, the catcher depth in the system. I mean, Corey Lee, again, Luke Berryhill and Yarner Diaz. Why do you think that the Astros in specific are doing so good, at least in that aspect of, of drafting, trading for catchers in the minors, And they recently traded Papierski for Mauricio Dubon, which has turned out very well for the Astros. Why do you think that the Astros have been doing so well in that aspect?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, maybe I don't want to say luck of the draw, but they've gotten a few catchers in the system that can really hit. You mentioned Barry Hill, Yainer Diaz, even Corey Lee. Was a first round pick back in 2019. But I think they, like I said, I think they do a good job of developing players, and developing hitters. And the philosophy, from what I can gather from talking to coaches and players, is swing at the right pitches and hit it hard. And if you can do that, you're going to be successful. If you hit the ball hard, you're going to be successful. Don't hit it on the ground, because grounders and singles aren't going to get you to the big leagues. But I think the Astros have done well just finding guys that can hit, and Barry Hill, minor league player of the year last year. This year he's had a pretty good season, a little rough stretch recently, but he'll end up probably turning it around. But we see what Yainer Diaz is doing up in AAA now. Got him in the Miles Straw deal, and he's looking like a really good prospect. You mentioned Papierski, very good defensively, and they ended up flipping him and getting a solid utility player back. Just up and down the system, yeah, it seems like from where we were 3 or 4 years ago to where we are now, the catching depth is insane compared to where it was not that long ago.
Yeah, I agree completely. And now I want to shift over to maybe some guys that were in the minors last year or maybe even this year and just got called up. And I'm talking specifically about JJ Matias. Honestly, I went to a game, before he got called up, and let me tell you, that swing is really smooth. And I was starting to think, that maybe Yuli's a little bit older, right? I think he's past his prime. Do you see a scenario where the Astros put full faith in JJ Matias to be that first baseman of the future?
I definitely think it's possible. The Astros are going to go into spring training next year, or whenever they're done with Gurriel, whenever Gurriel decides to move on or retire, whatever the case is, they're going to go in. It's probably going to be an open competition, and you're going to have guys like Matijevic there. We've seen what he can do so far in the major league level. And although he doesn't have a lot of hits, you see the power that he possesses. But a guy like Yainer Diaz, who is a catcher but has played a lot of innings at first base this year, and I don't know, maybe the Astros have plans of doing that with their catchers after Maldonado leaves. If you have a couple decent catchers, rotating them out so they stay fresh to the postseason. But I do think Matijevic is a guy who will have a good shot at taking that first base job whenever the time comes. We see what he does, like I said, with the power. And I think the adjustment is something people got to realize too. Is his first taste of AAA. I'm not going to say it went poorly, but it didn't go as well as it did this year. And then this year he was awesome. So there's going to be an adjustment period for him. But right now, we're seeing the power that he can show, and I think it's just going to be getting consistent at bats and getting comfortable at the major league level.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And we talked about right now we talked about JJ Matias and his power. Now I want to talk about the center fielders. Last year Jose Siri, Chas McCormick, and Jake Myers all showed above average power. And this year, of course, Jose Siri's back down in AAA. Chas McCormick, he's going to go back down once Michael Bradley comes back. Maybe not. He could stay. Maybe you bring down JJ again, but that's unlikely. Why do you think this year that Jake Myers, that just came back from an injury, gained so much trust in Dusty Baker and the general manager to think that he's better than both of those guys who really played well last year and obviously underperforming this year, but putting trust in a guy that, was injured in the postseason? Why do you think that is? Do you think that there's maybe something that obviously as fans we don't know? Why do you think that is?
I don't know if it's something that we don't know. I just think, last year Myers had a really good season in AAA, came up, was successful at the big league level, plays elite defense in center field, which we obviously know is important. Good arm out there as well, and had success, got injured in the playoffs. And I think he was your guy in the playoffs, and he ended up getting injured. And I think it was kind of his job to get back this year. And, he was better than McCormick last year offensively. Unfortunately, Siri has struggled a little bit, offensively this year, and then McCormick has been up and down. But he's good with the bat. But I think Myers is probably a better defensive player, and I think McCormick is probably a little more hit or miss with the power and with the strikeouts and stuff. But I think they just have faith in Myers. He's solid defensively. He was good when he played in AAA last year. Good in the majors last year. Good in the playoffs. Had a couple big hits, and I think they just want to. It's his job to lose at this point. They're going to let him have the opportunity. But if he struggles, you got McCormick and you got Siri right there waiting for him.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I also want to talk, I think that a lot of the bigger conversations, at least in the Astros community, has been over that center field job, where honestly those three have shown themselves that they can be at some point replacement level or better players, that maybe could be trade pieces or they could be called back down. Maybe like a quadruple A player like Jose Siri is doing right now, where he's raking in AAA, but the question mark over major league pitching, still remains. Where do you think that they rank specifically, at least to the chances they have of staying in the roster permanently? I mean, obviously, Chas McCormick, you said, I think he has a little bit better of a bat than Siri. But again, something that you didn't talk about with Jose Siri just has incredible defense, just the speed and everything. So where do you think they rank, specifically coming postseason time? Could you see Jose Siri, making it into the roster as a pinch runner or defensive replacement?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. If I was ranking them, I think it's Myers first, McCormick, and then Siri. But I think Siri offers things that maybe the others can't, and that's what you talk about, the pinch running in the playoffs. He's obviously very good defensively. He struggled a little bit with the bat this year. He's hitting. I'm looking at it right here. Was hitting one. That was last year, but he struggled with the bat a little bit this year. But he provides things that maybe Myers and McCormick does with that speed on the bases and kind of that moxie he has on the field, which I know there's a lot to talk about that with he got sit down shortly after kind of pimping that home run he hit to left field. But I think like we just said, I think they got faith in Myers and what he can do offensively and defensively. And I think he's going to be that steady guy out in center field. I don't know if they end up carrying. It's hard to say when they come around to the postseason, right, with trades and everything. Could Siri make the roster as a defensive replacement, as a pinch runner? I definitely think there's a chance. But right now, if you were ranking them, I think Myers would be the number one guy.
Yeah, I actually really agree. And now I want to shift over the conversation, if you will, over to current prospects, and specifically what you think are some of the prospects that people should pay more attention to right now. Because I mean, obviously we talked about all the obvious ones like Hunter Brown, Luke Berryhill, Corey Lee, who just got called up. Is there any prospect that you think people should pay more attention to in the future, like let's say 2023, 2024, maybe 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a ton of them. I think Alex Santos, the guy they drafted in the second round a couple years ago, he's in low A, but he's kind of finding his way right now. Colin Barber, an outfielder they drafted out of high school a couple years ago, he's in high A, tearing the cover off the ball. I think he's hitting like 323. He'll probably be in double A pretty soon. We mentioned Yainer Diaz. Let me see a couple other guys. Misael Tamarez, flame throwing right-hander in double A right now. I mean, he's up to 97. Pretty consistently with the fastball. So it's definitely a guy to watch. I think the AAA club has some very intriguing arms, in a JP France and a Sean Dubin, who unfortunately is on the IL right now. And I'm not sure what the diagnosis is going to be, but he's a guy that's running up to 100. But in terms of kind of really going high upside, I think if you go look at Fayetteville, they got some really young starters that are pitching there. Miguel Ulola, Edison Bautista, those guys are striking out guys at a high clip. And not allowing a lot of hits, which is something you want to see from a young prospect. We know the walks are going to be there sometimes, and hopefully you can get that under control. But if you're missing bats and guys aren't getting hits, that's usually a good thing. But I think the system has a lot of prospects that aren't going to be on a top 100 list, but that are kind of making waves. Emmanuel Valdez, a guy who is in AAA this year and absolutely crushing. Leads the Astros system in home runs, RBIs after doing the exact same thing last year, leading the system in home runs and RBIs. Now for him, it's just where do you play him? He's an infielder, and there's really not a spot on the Astros infield right now. But yeah, like we talked about, it doesn't really matter what the overall ranking is of the system, but ultimately the Astros find good players, and they're doing that again right now.
Yeah, and I also want to talk, maybe a little bit of an elephant in the room over, the Astros scandal, how that affected the minor leagues, maybe a little bit more than the actual roster in itself. Because I mean, you look at the punishment. Some people said it was a little bit soft, whatever. That's for other people to discuss. But overall, they took away draft picks that could have been used in building a minor league system that was a little bit beaten down with the Zach Greinke trade. And so, what do you think about the effect that the scandal and the repercussions had on the minor league system? And do you think that it's fully recovered now that we're back to having a first round pick again?
I mean, it's going to take a little bit of time because, your first round pick and your second round pick last year, if they were college players, maybe they're in high A right now. If they were high school players, they're probably in low A, single A. So it takes time. I think ultimately what you're going to see, though, and where it really affects, I mean, obviously having the prospects come up is phenomenal. But, people want to talk about James Click and maybe the lack of moves he made. And I actually did wrote an article about this recently. Jeff Luna was phenomenal at his job, and he acquired very good players through trade. He acquired very good players through the draft, but he traded a lot of high picks. I mean, for Zach Greinke, they traded a first-round pick in Seth Beer, a first-round pick in J.B. Bukauskas, a second-round pick in Corbin Martin. for Justin Verlander, they traded a first-round pick in Daz Cameron, a third-round pick in Jake Rogers, and I mean I can go on and on. They've traded a lot of first-round and second-round picks that they selected and then traded them out for players. And I think that's where you start to see the pain in the system, right? I think the system has good players right now, but if you want to go make a trade and you have to trade out somebody like a Hunter Brown or a Corey Lee or a Pedro Leon, and you're trading your top guys, then your system really takes a hit. The Astros were able to do that the last few years because they had so many good players and they had these top picks as well. I think that's where it's really going to come back to bite them, is when they're not able to make these trades at the deadline. I mean, obviously, look at the team right now. They don't really look like they need anything. They're playing really good baseball. You can always improve, but I think that's where it's really going to hurt them, is not having those bullets, to go out and trade for more players.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I also want to talk about something specifically with minor leaguers and the pay situation. I mean, that's something that's been talked about a lot, but I also want to grab your perspective since, you've been covering the Astros minor leagues. What do you think would be, a solution or maybe, something to work around? Because I don't feel like it's been covered enough, the fact that, some minor leaguers retire early, that some of them do have talent, but they retire because of working conditions or, just overall how they get paid. And luckily for me, at least, I haven't seen any stories with the Astros on it, but how do you decrease the chances of that happening, early retirement, specifically in, a system like ours where, it's not looking good, specifically, like you said, with the trades and, leverage. So how do you think, Major League Baseball should manage that situation?
Yeah, that's a really tough question because, money is, I mean, obviously the teams have a lot of money and they could shell out a little bit more. My fear with that would be if the Astros have 4 full season minor league teams right now, and if let's say they have 30 players per team, and they have more down in the complex, but let's say they do, and you say we want them to get paid more. I don't want that to mean there's less chances. I mean, like just like the draft. The draft was 40 rounds, now it's 20. There's less chances for these guys to get an opportunity. You can go look. I mean, the Astros have drafted guys after the 20th round that have gone on to be successful prospects and even major league players. So I worry about trying to pay guys more because then it's less chances. I do think they need to get paid more, and I do think there's money out there to pay them. I think the Astros kind of started a trend, which you've already seen, where their minor league players don't have to worry about paying for housing. They put them up in an apartment, fully furnished apartment. A lot of the meals are provided. I think that's a good stepping stone to help out minor league players. If you're not going to do it on the pay side, is you comp them on things like that. They don't need to worry about trying to find a house or living with some host family in Sugar Land or Corpus Christi. Give them an apartment, pay for that, pay for the utilities, whatever they got to do. I do think the pay needs to get bumped up, obviously, and hopefully that'll come eventually. But I think the Astros have started a good trend of paying for things like that. And I think they do a pretty good job of taking care of their players. There's always ways they can get better. That's number one. It seems like, Jim Crane is more than willing to do what it takes to run a good organization. I mean, he did that right after the COVID thing happened. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's something else up his sleeve, in a way to compensate minor league players.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And, we're going to end real quickly, but I do want to, get one more question past you. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to talk to you about, the state of, minor leaguers in general. Like it's a tough life. I mean, if you're playing for, a team that's maybe a little bit lower, let's say like the Orioles or the Reds, there is a better chance that you'll get the call. But in teams like the Astros, you can have players that are major league ready, and they could very well be a starter on another team, but you just can't find a spot for them. So why do you think that some players, in general, kind of lose it? I mean, I've seen some stories, over players that, are really good prospects, and then they just never get called up, and then they kind of just waste their careers. So do you think that's maybe a little bit demoralizing for somebody trying to make a career in baseball? And what would be your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be. If you're performing at the minor league level and you're not getting an opportunity, it's frustrating. But ultimately, every game you go to, every minor league game, there's usually going to be a scout there from another team. And you play for the organization that you're playing for right now, but that may not be the job that you have in a year. And if a team sees what you're doing and they like you enough, they may go trade for you. I think the Astros. I mean, you kind of look at a Phil Maton last year, right? He probably had no idea that he was going to get traded to a winning organization, a major league team. And I know he was already on the Indians. But I think a lot of teams will trade for guys that they want, that they think has a chance. And, if you perform at the minor league level, someone will probably end up giving you a chance, even if it's not the organization you're playing for right now. Somebody might see what you're doing and want to try to trade for you or something like that. So I think if you continue to play well, and you put up numbers at the minor league system, eventually you're going to get an opportunity somewhere, either with the Astros or with another team. And it's all about just staying consistent, managing the highs and the lows of a long season, the grind in the minor league season, and ultimately just kind of playing for that next spot, because you never know what could happen. Like right now, the Astros are set on the infield, but you never know what could happen in a year or two. And although Emmanuel Valdez is having a great season in AAA, he's 23. And we like to see those prospects come up when they're that age, but there's nothing wrong with the guy debuting at 24, 25 as well. And I mean, you never know what could happen with the Astros. The guy gets traded or gets hurt. There's no telling. So I think ultimately you just got to stay consistent, and that opportunity is going to come out eventually.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's really a pleasure to talk baseball with you. And can you just tell, maybe the viewers, where they can find you on social media, anything you want to tell us before we go?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook page. It's all at Astros Future. My website, astrosfuture.com. Doing minor league recaps, interviews of players. Actually, tomorrow I got one posting with Will Wagner, the son of Astros great closer Billy Wagner. So that'll be a good one to check out. But yeah, follow me on all the socials, and trying to bring the best minor league content I can to everyone out there.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Thanks for. Well, thank you. I mean, it's really important, for people, especially in the Houston sports community, to know who the future is, because I feel like with sports, nothing's for certain. Injuries can come up, and dynasties may fall. So it's really good that you're bringing out content specifically for the minor leagues that can help fans get accustomed to the new stars. Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.